I would venture to guess it's less than 1%. It's usually someone passes away or something like that. So does that answer that question from just a business model perspective? It's not necessarily from an in-stream perspective.
Well, and so the perspective that I hear or that I interpret, and I could be completely wrong on it, is that you have certain demographics of current clients at McLean. And my question is more about the next 10 years and new client acquisition. So I'm 34, I have Mint.com, I started dabbling with personal capital, so I'm starting to receive these updates and new ways of delivering information. And as I progress through my financial savings and start, accumulating wealth, I may not qualify for a particular firm's minimums today, but certainly will do in the future. What's that path going to be from the advisor's perspective? How are they going to gain my business?
Okay, well, first of all, don't let Bill leave this room without one of your cards. It'll break my heart to see him go to personal capital. Boy. This is where there's a caveat emptor here, because I do have a dog in this hunt, so to speak. That's why I created InStream, to sort of address this. I'm at a certain stage where I'm fortunate enough that I can sort of take this and give things a swing. And in my estimation, what an advisor needs to be doing going forward to position themselves accordingly is to provide, a service that's truly proactive in nature. A client, in my estimation, pays us the 1%, the retainer, the whatever, to proactively guide them through a financial life cycle of decisions. They don't pay us so that we can meet once a year, and 2 weeks before that meeting, we get the paperwork together and say, quick, do a plan. Oh my goodness, he's coming in. And then recite out loud what their quarterly report was. And then deal at that moment in time. So what did you do during this past year that we could perhaps help you with? That's stale. That's almost like, and improving upon that is, in my estimation, stupid. That's like improving upon the CD drive or something like that. Who cares? I think we need to sort of take a step back, and we need to borrow from these guys, not the other way around. We need to see what these guys are doing and implement that into our practice, because we have the upper hand. And in my estimation, that means real-time planning. To me, that's proactively allowing the advisor to wake up in the morning and frankly see, these are the things you should be doing for your clients. Not from a CRM back of the office standpoint. CRM is great, but it's great for, hey, the client died, begin the death of a client sequence. No. We need a wealth management platform that actually alerts you to say, hey, these are the things you need to be doing for this client that today that are relevant, that wasn't relevant last week because changes in their demographic profile occurred. And that runs the spectrum of planning, and in removing that event-driven planning perspective to one that's dynamic. There's no reason that's not being done right now, and that's ultimately what the impetus to get me to create InStream. But that's the thing, in my estimation, will get you as a client. If I can tell you, Bill, hey Bill, if you were to come be a client, this is what I'm going to do for you, and every day I'm going to be watching this, and at the end of the year, I have a report for you that says, hey, I looked at your mortgage 12 times, I made 5 recommendations, we decided to pass on them because for whatever reason. I looked at your insurance 12 times, we increased your term because your child was born, and that means you necessitated such and such. We looked at your financial plan, I don't know, whatever number you want to assign to it, 3 times, and we tuned it a little bit because the volatility in the summer made it somewhat tenuous, and so you needed to divert contributions from your taxable to your IRA. That type of stuff. Because if I were to venture to bet, we have clients that we've had for over 10 years, and if they were to come to me and say, hey, what have you done for me? I'd be like, have a Snickers, and then I'd get into Juncture and...
They're very tasty.
Yeah, I'd get on Junction, beat the heck out of it to, run reports and, whatever. I wouldn't know. And I find that pathetic on our part, that we can't really come up with information right away. This is what we've done. And until we get to this proactive life cycle management, I'm not going to get Bill. He's going to go to personal capital.
I go back to something I opened with, which is expectations. I think it changes client expectations, particularly younger clients, but I'd argue most of your 70-year-old clients are probably on Facebook, so their expectations are changing too. And so that person that has an account on Mint is going to ask, well, don't you have something like this? Can't we share information like this? And I too have a dog in this hunt, but I did it because I observed that desire. And so I think you'll see this, and this notion of proof of value, demonstration of value, I think will be become more important, right? What have you done for me? And it will need to be more and more tangible. Simply being an undifferentiated advisor will be harder and harder over time. This happens when Walmart enters a town, right? All of the stores that sold the same thing as Walmart with no difference go out of business eventually. All of the stores that sold something unique and interesting that you couldn't get at Walmart stay in business, in fact, sometimes thrive. So I encourage you to be the latter. Find the thing that makes you unique, demonstrate it really clearly, and leverage the technology that's available today to make that vastly more scalable.
I'm going to take some more feedback.
Yeah, one question actually. I've been following Personal Capital also quite a bit. And when you talked about margins, my expectation was similar as what you said, like it's been way lower than, not margin, the revenue base that they have. So the fee structure was lower. But I was surprised. It started 90 basis points, go down barely. So my question was the expectation that you and I, all of us have had, why can't this online robo-advisor business be built at 45, 50 basis points? Personal capital is way too high. It's not, and for somebody, if you can get an online advisor at 100 basis points, a good firm, there's no reason to go to personal capital for 90 basis points. Why can't it be done for cheaper?
Yeah, I'm going to start on this one. This is a passionate topic of mine. Pricing has nothing to do with cost. Pricing has everything to do with value, and they know this. So they're not going to look to lower the pricing because they can. Also, it turns out that there's a lot of data that suggests that the elasticity of pricing and asset management is flatter than you'd expect. And so simply lowering the pricing doesn't drive volume in the way that you might expect. So they're smart business people, and they're going to test the top of the market and see what it does. You'll also see the same thing with Betterment. Betterment, I think, starts at 100 basis points and scales down. They're not seeking to be a discount. Amazon does not discount books. They give a better experience. So don't mistake this for a price break. This is about trying to drive a better experience using online technologies. It's easier, it's more convenient. I don't have to leave my house. I already know what's going on. Everything's automated. I don't have to think. Those are the kinds of things that they're trying to achieve. They haven't done it that well, but they're just getting started. And the thing that they will do that is harder, perspective-wise, for individual independent advisors is experimentation. Businesses in Silicon Valley, my business is in Boston, but we take the same approach. We're very experimental. You have a hypothesis about how things are going to go. You run an experiment, you see if it works. If it doesn't, you take a different tack and you try it again and again and again. Those incremental 1% improvements in the business, the acquisition of clients, the servicing of clients add up over time. And that's what you want to look out for. You don't want to, none of these businesses are interesting today. They're irrelevant. Wealthfront has 34, almost 35 million on their Form ADV. Whoop-de-doo. There's nothing. That's not the point. The point is, how are they learning and innovating, and what will they be in 10 years? Or what will the predecessor? So what will the businesses that follow that in those footsteps, the trail that they broke? Why can't that be you? Why can't you learn from them and evolve your business? I'd argue you have a real advantage in the knowledge of client relationships that can't be replicated by technology, but technology can amplify that. And I think that's what you can learn from these kinds of online advisory firms.
I think it's 100% correct. It's the point of what can we sort of steal from them? Frankly,
Yes.
what can we borrow from? It's a nice. What can we borrow from them?
Stealing's better.
So speaking of stealing, I want one more of my follow-up questions, and then we'll take some more from the audience. Speaking of stealing, what I see is trends like on Mint.com is they see how much I pay in insurance premiums to cover my cars. And I get an ad that says, on average, you're paying hundreds of dollars more than all these other people. We recommend X, Y, and Z company, get you a rate, and that's how Mint monetizes their platform. But there's some crowdsourcing elements going on. They have millions of people funneling all their financial data into the system, And they're using it strategically, which happens to drive their revenue, but I think there are direct planning applications. You touched on the proactivity elements of it, Alex. What can crowdsourcing and the big data trends do to financial planning delivery?
Well, I assume that's a setup question for me, Bill. So
Gigantic softball.
Thank you.
You better hit this one out of the park.
No, I agree, and you know, I think there's just a plethora. Let me back it up a little bit. We're all in this together to a certain extent. Registered investment advisors or independent broker dealers. We're still, you know, we're all small businesses trying to learn from each other, and it's a rising tide environment. It just is. I mean, I'll walk down the hallway and I'm more than willing to share with anyone what's going on within McLean. I don't think twice about it, and I think there's a reciprocity in that. So there's first a fabric of sharing that needs to take place that's out there, and you see that with study groups, etc. And there's no reason why we can't borrow from each other. This is still a nascent industry. I came in this from another discipline. My partner came in it from the insurance world. He got tired of being Ned Ryerson. The CPAs got in this business. They got tired of the grind of every day, you know, staying up, pulling all-nighters, and so they became financial planners. And you know, look at it from an academic perspective. There are not that many institutions out there relative to law school or whatever. It's still burgeoning up. So it's still a nascent industry on knowledge bases being developed. But we can go straight to wireless on this one from the standpoint of using the collective wisdom of all of you within some sort of financial planning platform, if you will, that can help us better engage with our clients, not just from a tactically getting better rates on insurance standpoint, but from a, hey, you have a client that has this type of demographic, you may want to consider doing such and such. Now, again, you can crowdsource it, and you have, you know, the good part is you have a lot of numbers, but you know, there could be some information that you don't really care about because I'm not like this advisor. So you take the crowdsourcing to another level and you begin to follow certain advisor subsets. Hey, this guy's niche is dentist. He follows dentists. That's his thing. I'm going to follow this group of advisors. These are fee-only advisors. I'm going to follow this group of advisors. And then you begin to build up like-mindedness. And at the end of the day, you know, the market's closed. Markets develop, and I'm a big believer in that. And so by seeing what everyone else is doing, you're naturally going to get a sense of what you should be doing for clients. Let's say I focus on small business owners, right? And I'm following a group of small business owners and the things that they're doing for clients. And this is beyond planning that you could ever get in an NAV plan. It's not a, you know, let's do a cash flow based sort of thing. This is more like, hey, what are the rules of thumb? What are the things this advisor should be like looking at? Creativity of solutions, if you will. And if I'm following small business owners, that's my niche, and I'm following 10 advisors that do that, and all of a sudden I get a prospect that's, I don't know, I'm making this up now, 5 years from retirement, and he's, you know, and I don't have anything in place. Maybe I get an alert that says, you may want to consider doing an ESOP for this type of client. You know, there's that's missing, that's just there, that we're not leveraging ourselves, and that's one way from a common fabric standpoint that, you know, just from that standpoint, we can do head over heels above what these guys can ever do. Now, from a pricing model, the possibilities are just enormous in terms of what we can do from a vendor standpoint and how we can sort of better negotiate deals for clients and so forth. There's not only individual, but there's also volume that we can provide to them with regards to high net worth investors and so forth. So and that ultimately benefits the end client to a large extent.
I want to generate some data because I'm so interested in data. So let me ask Bill a question.
Yeah.
Bill, have you ever clicked through and bought anything on Mint?
No.
Is anybody in the audience ever bought anything through Mint?
No hands.
Let me ask another question.
However,
You're a financial advisor?
I have viewed credit card offers and compared it with my situations, and yes, I have compared insurance information, but I have gone through and probably generated a tiny little bit of revenue just for clicking through, but it wasn't enough, and this is interesting, for me to change my existing relationship with my State Farm provider.
And you have a financial advisor yourself, don't you?
I do.
Have you ever taken a recommendation or bought something that they've asked you to do?
Yes.
I'd ask the same question rhetorically of the audience. So merely having the recommendation, irrelevant. What you need to do is have that recommendation with advice. Mint, for what it's worth, and you know, Aaron, hi, I hope you're listening. I know the business model really didn't work. The exit was wonderful, but the business model didn't work. They monetize $8 to $11 per user per year. Costs, the base cost for just the data was $6 per user per year. So there was no business model that worked here. But if you take those analytics and you match it with advice, you have a powerful business model where you're not just the typical advisor, you become kind of an omniscient 24/7 superhero to the client because you're
What business are you talking
you're looking over their shoulder 24/7. Well, I'm actually pimping Blue Leaf here too. We do monitoring and alerting. So this is self-serving, and I'm happy to disclose that. But I also am doing it because I think it's the right thing for the business. I think there's massive opportunity to allow for scale.
That's exactly. I agree with John wholeheartedly, and that's where you can learn a lot from the online platforms. And what I realize is really the advisors are the coordinators of services. And so why don't we create a platform that can proactively identify things that they could be doing for their clients from a wealth management perspective that really just ramps up their business. And by the same token, there's many advisors here that go to Dinky Town, they go to Bankrate, they go to these retail sites, which is complete bush league, frankly. We do it. We did it at McLean, man. And so the thinking is, well, why don't we create a system that can not only alert opportunities of things they should be doing for clients, but that can create a marketplace of solutions in which the advisor can call the client and sort of be that hero, if you will. Because to your point, no one gets online and so forth, but I can't tell you how many times at McLean we coordinate insurance. We get it signature ready, essentially. We coordinate insurance. We coordinate mortgages. We coordinate everything that touches money. And that's just, there's a huge friction in doing that as well. And so if we can sort of provide a platform that not only alerts opportunities with regards to wealth management, but then also lets the advisor help the client become an informed consumer and coordinate those subsequent services, that to me takes what's online and serves it up to advisors in a manner that we can, frankly, just continue our rise as being the purveyors of advice.
The real beauty of this as a consumer of these kinds of services is I am served better. I'm more completely served by having all of this looked after in an automated basis. And if that's true and the advisor's business is healthier and grows larger and is more sustainable, this is a literal win-win situation. And that's the best thing that can happen to grow and make the industry more stable.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's take some more feedback.
Sounds like a lot of this conversation is about defending what I have. To me, in a lot of ways, because I'm preserving a value proposition for my existing clients, but all these other vehicles, they're like going out to people, and they're more accessible, so people know about them first. So what if you are already entangled in there? How am I going to pry you away from something like that? Or how am I going to be out there just like they are, so they can compare me up front and say, oh yeah, I'll get better service from this guy, instead of just sort of falling into that planning scenario.
What's your value proposition?
My value proposition is the same as one that you're elucidating and that we're all talking about. But how do I get more people to know about it so that we can get them before they're already ensnared into something else? Or make them then want to change? Because like you said, once you're in with somebody, they know all about you. It's harder to get them to move.
I'm just trying to think of you sort of skirted it a little bit, not in a bad way, and it's a very tough question to answer.
Sure. Maybe I'm not sure with the answer. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, then fair enough. Then I would say the first thing you need to do, from a hierarchy of need standpoint for your business, is what is specifically your value proposition in 30 seconds, and are you following through on that? And once you've accomplished that, then you're better able to then build up a fortress if you want to defend, or be more aggressive in terms of soliciting clients.
Proactive than just that, of course.
Yeah, I think you've described actually one of the central challenges of the wealth management or financial planning business, which is scalable client acquisition. But I have news for you: the online guys haven't solved it either. Wealthfront is a good example of this. So they spent $20 million and have 35 million, did I mention, in assets under management. That dog won't hunt. It's not a sustainable model. So I think everyone's still searching for that model that is sustainable. Today we grow our businesses, we call them practices, which drives me nuts, but this is the NFL people. It's not practice. The way we do that, we have a very high cost of customer acquisition. Payback on a client acquisition in this industry is something greater than 2 years typically, but we subsidize it with our time. Basically, by starting in the business and earning a wage that is approximately equal to what the hourly wage of McDonald's is. And eventually, we grow a client base and that has enough critical mass that starts to refer business to ourselves. And we sort of shift our time to servicing and less to marketing, et cetera. But we still haven't found a scalable marketing model. And I think that that's a topic for another entire panel and probably a book. There are lots of ways, and I'd encourage you to take a look at some of the things that are being done in Silicon Valley about how to discover them. I think it works different for different businesses, but there are a process called customer development where you take this value proposition notion and you marry it with the idea of the scientific method and start experimentation. And you can start to find niches or pockets of scalable customer acquisition processes. But it is nearly a full-time job. That's really the trick. So I think what you're going to see is a continued trend to consolidation, fewer one-person shops, and more where you've got people, enough mass that you've got somebody who can be the expert at marketing, who can full-time experiment to find that scalable model. Because it's not obvious. There's no clear playbook on this today. It's being written.
Yeah, Alex, take 1 minute, and then I'm going to take one question from the back.
Yeah, I just one thing that John said. I agree in general what he's saying,
You
but
can disagree. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't know about the one-man shop. I mean, people have been calling the death of the one-man shop for like, I don't know, since Hurley wrote his paper 20 years ago, and then he wrote another one 10 years ago.
It's still dying.
But I think there's enough that you can have a lifestyle practice and be fine with it. If you want to amplify, you're fine. But you know,
Sure.
you can dovetail into a lifestyle practice, and there's completely nothing wrong with that. In fact, many ways, there's many positives to that. But if you want a specific takeaway, you know, here we're just talking in theory, and so I'd like to, you know, what can you do? Be more proactive in certain things. You know what? Think about wealth management. It's about knowing the client, knowing everything that affects them. Google Alerts. I mean, if you want a strict, you know, let's get away from the theory and what can you do right now, tomorrow? Google Alerts. You know, put in your client interest, put in where they work. You know, find out what's going on about them. LinkedIn. You know, get all your clients on LinkedIn, be on LinkedIn, find out if they get a promotion, find out if they get something that, you know, those are things that are going to necessitate a financial planning update, if you will, that you can be on top of. Begin to use your CRM in a manner that can be useful. Print out on a monthly basis, print out all of your clients' kids' birthdays. I'm sure there's milestone birthdays that necessitate certain planning.
All right, 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm done. But something like that. I'm trying to move it beyond just theory and like what can an advisor leave this room come away with.
That's right. You want 30 seconds?
Less, 15. I think the grand experiment that's being run by these robo-advisors, the big picture thing that they're doing that's very different today than it ever was, is they've got business models that are about gathering data ahead of gathering assets. Because it's simpler, it's easier, it's faster. And eventually you sell into that base of data, which is client data, asset management services, other wealth management services, etc. So the experiment I would run if I were a practicing advisor today would be, how do I leverage that trend? How do I experiment with that for myself? That is a pure pitch for Blue Leaf, I'll disclose. Because we're actually observing, it's not my idea, I'm basically following you guys. We're seeing advisors on our platform use Blue Leaf in that way to gather data ahead of assets as a prospect each way.
In the back.
Probably what I'm going to say is probably considered heresy.
I love heretics.
It seems like we're combating all this. And I guess my question is, ultimately, what are we doing? What are our clients paying us? They're paying us for information, for expertise. And a lot of times they are, because stock picking, I mean, you see the move to ETFs, financial planning to a certain degree is going that same direction. And I guess my question is, with the commoditization of info, would it make more sense for advisors to run that direction and find a way to decompartmentalize that, decouple it from the business, and start modeling that are giving that, or selling that as a product, find a way to monetize that instead.
Can you give a quick summary?
Summary. So the question is really, if clients are paying us for essentially information and expertise, and there's a commoditization of information and expertise, shouldn't we run headlong along the trend and find other ways to sort of monetize the relationship? Is that a reasonable summary? I'm heretical too, and I'd actually argue with the premise. If I recall, you weren't here at the beginning. I would argue that while clients justify paying you for your expertise, most clients can figure this stuff out on their own. And so, in fact, they are not paying you for that. What they're paying you for is the insurance premium that Alex talked about earlier, for preventing them from making a mistake, for being the trusted counselor. Now, that's a hard value proposition to sell. Hi, I'm the trusted counselor. So we all sell the expertise, but the reality is the emotional transaction is all around the counseling. And that's the differentiation that these online firms, I don't think, have. And I've heard it said several times that this feels defensive. If so, I apologize, because I don't think this should be defensive at all. I think this is a massive opportunity for the advisory business to take an enormous leap forward, to become vastly more scalable, and for those folks that have the ambition to grow their businesses, to really throw on the rockets. I think there's a huge opportunity here, because a lot of the data management, a lot of the things that are troubling about the business are getting a lot easier. The thing that we just haven't broke through yet on is scalable client acquisition, but that's coming too.
John, can you segue into takeaways, talking about throwing away assumptions, perhaps the startup characteristics that the advisors in the audience can take away?
I counsel a lot of other startups, and what I remind startup CEOs, really all entrepreneurs, is that to be an entrepreneur and to do it effectively is to wear on one hand the hat of a seasoned CEO who's buttoned down, but on the other eye is a patch, because you have to be a little bit of a pirate. You have to be willing to break some rules, try some things, and experiment to make progress. And that is the thing that the startups will do that can be troubling for advisors who get paid, in some sense, to be conservative. And so I would say, take an experimental mindset. Not everything you do is a long-term commitment. Choose things to experiment. What is the toughest problem you're facing in your business around growing your clients? Pick a way to experiment. Make it finite. Commit to it and measure it. Apply the scientific method to improving your business, and over time, I assure you, it will improve. That's the lesson I take away.
Thank you. Alex, one last takeaway.
Sure. Just to quickly answer your question is, I think you run into trouble if you want to monetize your clients in a manner that they're doing online, simply because your advice, there's an independence to it that's pristine, that I would try to never put a chink in its armor, if you will. Now, from that standpoint, I agree with John. I'm not necessarily being defensive at all. It's really one of those things that, take a look at your value proposition, make sure that you're actually able to come through on that, which is through, measurement, to a large extent. But what I would try to do is try to pick up what they're doing online and see what transfers to your business to a large extent. That's, to some extent, what I've been doing. It led me to create InStream, but to a large extent, I don't see why it can't lead any of you to sort of do something, within your client servicing. I think many times we don't think big enough, and we need to amplify, to borrow your words, great word, we need to amplify our purview of what we can be doing for our clients in many ways. And it's just, and that's not being defensive in my estimation. That's the spread offense and go. So to a large extent, I think we can take what they're doing and be ahead of the curve from a client servicing standpoint. There's a lot of technology out there that we can implement right now within our system to sort of help us be more proactive. I don't have time to, give you the litany list, but just peruse FPPad, and you'll have more things than you can handle. With regards to what can be applicable to your business that helps you stay in front of them, that incorporates the technology interfaces that right now are trying to deliver investment advice.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, John. Our time is up. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Exhibition needs to the hall.
Be a pirate.